Good afternoon. This is Kevin, volunteer at Cppcon. Today I have Jason Turner with me to talk about his upcoming class at the convention, C++ Best Practices. And then you also have a couple talks and a panel I think you're part of. But why don't you go ahead and give us a little introduction about yourself, Jason?
Let's see. I've been programming in C++ for, I don't know, about 15 years professionally now, but playing with it since about 1996. As you mentioned, I am giving some talks at Cppcon this year. That'll be my 4th year at Cppcon. I am also host of Cppcast, and I have a YouTube channel called C++ Weekly that I release an episode every week. Other than that, I am a C++ trainer, and I also do some contracting.
Excellent. So of your class that you have coming, if someone was to take the class, what kind of things would they be looking forward to getting out of it? Is it more of a educational, or is it going to be a bit more hands-on?
My classes are always, the way I do training always is very similar to how I do my regular conference sessions, and that I try to make it very interactive. So while having your laptop there and doing like hands-on stuff may be beneficial, it is not 100% necessary, because I really want my students to be thinking like the compiler. I want you to think, okay, if I do this, what am I asking the compiler to do? And then that way we can make a lot more intelligent design decisions right up front. So there's going to be a lot of interaction, some hands-on, some group work, that is. But yes, I think that probably sums it up pretty well.
That's interesting to hear, because I hadn't really started working on thinking the way the compiler had. I was excited when, Godbolt had put out his web app, and it just made me start thinking that way, which has really helped my development. So that's excellent. Is there anything else that a newcomer, is it more of an entry level, or is it intermediate experience?
I would like to think anyone from beginner to probably intermediate, advanced intermediate would learn something from the class. Because like I said, it's a lot of just like learning how to think, but it's all going to be very practical. So it'll be rules that you can take back to your regular job and be like, oh, right, I know that using a dynamic allocation here is a waste. I should avoid that, or whatever. And we'll just go over it's a ton of different topics, but I definitely have more material than I need for 2 days. And I know that because I've taught this class many times, various versions of it. So we will cover as much material as we can get through with the class at whatever the personality and the speed of that class is. And then the students will be able to take all the slides home to continue and review on their own further down if we didn't get to everything. That's by design.
That's excellent. I have to say, there's so much stuff going on, and it's unfortunate that you can only pick one particular class per weekend. But yours is a post-class, so if someone's taking a pre-class, yours is still available after the conference, yep?
Yeah, definitely still available. And let's see, last year when I did a post-conference class, I actually had a couple of students that were sent to my class from their companies who didn't even attend the conference at all. They were sent to Seattle just for my class. So you're definitely still welcome to sign up for my class and do that if you didn't have any intention of even going to the conference.
Excellent. So then you also have a couple talks. I think on Monday it's Surprises in Object Lifetime.
Yes.
What's that about a bit?
So well-defined object lifetime is something that sets C++ apart from almost every other programming language out there. We have a very clear definition of when the lifetime of an object begins, when the lifetime of an object ends, and what that means. And there are a few cases where, unfortunately, the compiler, for one reason or another, the standard library surprises us. And I just thought this talk would be kind of fun because I like to teach about object lifetime. I think that is core to really understanding the language, and just to call attention to a few little caveats and maybe hopefully, get the attention of some people in the standards committee to see if there's anything that they want to say about any of these topics.
That's excellent. I have to kind of laugh because object lifetime bug with Oracle kind of bit us today that we were working on at my company. So I can appreciate that talk. And then you have the applied best practices on Friday?
Yes. So I don't want people to think that I'm going to be covering everything in a 1-hour talk on applied best practices that I will be covering in my 2 days of training. That is definitely not the case. But this 1 hour talk is basically, well, in one form or another, in blog post and C++ Weekly and in a training, conference talks, I've been talking about best practices for long enough to make me feel old. About 11 years, I guess now, since I've wrote my first blog post on trying to convey some of these topics that I didn't see the average C++ programmer getting. So I just kind of thought, well, what happens if I start a project completely from scratch and I try to apply all of these best practices that I've been talking about? What happens? Do they conflict with each other? Do surprises come out that we weren't expecting? Is it possible to do all these things? How much discipline does it require? So I started a new project from scratch that I've been working on for about 3 months now, just for the sake really of talking about at this conference talk.
Excellent. That ought to be interesting to see. Have you found it to be successful? Have you found practices that didn't apply, or has that been a decision at all?
There's been a few things on like 100% trusting the compiler warnings where you're like, some warnings are just very difficult to like reasonably get around. And you're like, yes, I know that I'm doing a signed to unsigned conversion here. Trust me, I need it. I know how two's complement math works. I am not invoking undefined behavior. And you're just like, okay, so you have to do, more casts than you would like to do. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the talk. Maybe I don't want to give away too many surprises for what I want to talk about for that talk, but that's the main thing I felt like was really like, okay, I feel like I'm beating my head against the compiler in a couple places here.
I got you. And so Thursday's the trainers panel. What's that about?
Yes, so there will be 2 trainers panels. Thursday is one of them, and this is for anyone who's interested in having some sort of on-site training come to their company, and it'll be a panel of us trainers sitting up there that you can ask questions of to talk about, like, what are the advantages, what do you need to know about having a trainer come to your company, and that kind of thing.
Excellent. So last question, is there any talks that you're excited or looking forward to seeing, or anything you'd recommend in newcomers to the conference or even people returning to get the best out of it?
Oh, goodness gracious. Now, if I had really thought about that question ahead of time, I would have had a good answer planned. Let's see. Shoot, I have to think for a minute. Do you mind if I do a moment of looking at the schedule?
Absolutely not. This is the spot where I should have probably sent the question beforehand and you would have done well with it. My apologies.
That is fine. There are a few that I am specifically looking forward to, but I kind of have to like refresh my memory because they weren't there on the tip of my tongue.
Well, and then there's so many on the schedule too. There's just a ton of good talks.
Yes. Oh, and the schedule is absolutely huge. And that's, let's see, the compile time regular expressions from HANA. I am definitely going to make a point of going to that one. That is on Tuesday. That is because I heard good things about her lightning talk that she gave last year. I guess it's hard to call out a bunch of specific ones. I don't want to just go over the schedule of things that I am signed up for, but lots of people will tell you that you need to just kind of not push yourself through the week because it's a long week, right? There's a lot of sessions to go to. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of, you might plan to go to talk A, but everyone that you're hanging out with at that moment is just moving in a group towards talk B, and you just kind of end up there. And, that's okay. Like, all of the talks are going to be online, so you can always go back and you can watch them online if you miss something in particular. Yeah, there's...
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the schedule right now to see what else pops up real quick.
I was going to say Odin had mentioned Hannah's talk as well. He was excited about that one too. I have to say, with the bit that I've used regular expressions, that's one I'll probably make it to as well.
Yeah, and it takes the context for all the things concept pretty far, which is one of the talks that I've given in the past. Oh, I also wanted to call some attention, if you don't mind, to Scripting at the Speed of Thought, Lua and C++ with Sol 3 by Jean-Hid Menid. I went to a version of that talk at C++ Now, and we interviewed him on CppCast, and the response that we got from the interview was outstanding. And so if you have any interest in like how scripting engines can interact with C++, it is a very good talk to go to. From my perspective, having written ChiScript, which is an embedded scripting engine for C++, I could have sat in that talk for 4 hours just like pushing him. How did you solve this problem? How did you solve that problem? I had to really restrain myself in C++ Now to not just try to dominate the entire session. Yes.
Yeah, the Lua stuff with C++ is interesting. We actually use a similar part for processing credit card transactions. We built rules out of it to be able to handle how it would score your interchange, whether or not it's a certain type of transaction, it gets a certain interchange. And it runs incredibly fast, especially in Linux tied to C++. So that ought to be an interesting one.
So I am curious, since if I can turn the tables on you for just a moment, are you using any kind of wrapper tooling or anything to help you do the bindings to C++ with Lua?
So I just started with the company and came in a year ago, but yeah, they actually wrote their internal bindings to it in a custom set of classes, and they've had really good luck with it. They've recently started looking at moving it to just C++ because we have far more C++ programmers to write rules than we do people that know Lua.
Right.
But that's the only reason it's been looking at moving is from the maintainability of Lua programmers versus a C++ programmer.
Yeah, I will say Lua is not my favorite language. I made some effort to learn it a few years ago, but it's been an incredibly versatile scripting language as far as, it's been used in all kinds of games and everything over the years.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. We joke because there's literally about 40 megabytes of rules that will come from each network, MasterCard or Visa, that is just how to score a different transaction for what kind of a rate it would get. And so it's incredibly in-depth what you can do with it, that's for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So that was the gist of what I had. Anything else you want to add before we call it?
I guess maybe I just want to reiterate, be sure to take your time at the conference. Don't wear yourselves out. There will be tons of things going on. It is easy to do all the things, get no sleep, and then end up with the conference crud when you get home and have a cold or something. So get some sleep, take your time, enjoy the conference. And yeah, everyone who comes, have fun.
I'm looking forward to seeing you there. I fly out Friday, so hope to see you soon.
I will be there on Sunday. See you then.
Bye-bye.